Not looking so golden, especially for the Golden State. The stock is down about 23% since going public, and that's bad news for California. The state was literally banking on putting $1.5 billion in the bank. Not too smart. That tax revenue probably not coming, though, since Facebook's falling so fast. Lizzie McDonald, who predicted all of this, by the way, says this is why the government can't rely on unreliable income and certainly shouldn't be planning on spending something it doesn't have. She joins me with our other all-stars, Jonathan Honig and Howard Rosencrans. But, Lizzie, they did. They did.
And, you know, predicting it, I basically read through what California was doing because I'm geeky, and I'm probably going to go cross-eyed from reading because I'm so geeky. But what they said was even the state's legislative analyst told Jerry Brown, do not rely on this income. You're only going to get maybe a third. Wealth is destroyed in market downturns. You know, Facebook investors could sit on the stock and not cash it out, creating capital gains revenue for the state, or they could move, but they penciled it in anyway. And the tragedy for, I hate to use the word tragedy, but the downside for taxpayers in California is this happens time and again, Neil. They will raise income taxes. They will raise sales taxes to paper over the budget holes that they blew open from these faulty estimates. We saw that in the dot-com crisis and the tech bubble. Time and again, California pencils it in. When the money doesn't come in, they hit everybody else with higher taxes.
Well, Howard, I mean, a lesson here, right or left, Democrat or Republican, you don't spend money you don't have. I mean, you might get it. It's like planning for a bonus you might get, but you don't start spending as if you did get it.
The problem is that the depth of it is going to get much worse. I mean, there's a whole pipeline of other companies that are built around the tax revenue theoretically associated with Facebook, all of the other social media games.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
And Facebook is a fiasco. It hasn't even started to get as bad as it will. It was a whole concept built on a social experience. Mark Zuckerberg has no actual focus on making this
Howard,
a commercial entity. Jonathan, you can look at it however you like. Down 25% is still an $80 billion valuation. Nobody's going to step up to the plate and buy this stock anytime soon.
If Facebook is a fiasco, then California is just an unmitigated disaster. I mean, they've got a $16 billion well, it's California. They've got a $16 billion deficit. And, you know, Neil, they've got 12% of the world's of the nation's population, 1/3 of the nation's welfare recipients. So they got big bills, big entitlement bills. And unfortunately, I think, as Liz pointed out, they're essentially playing the gambler's curse here, betting on the come, expecting gains from Facebook. They're not going to come. And because, as Howard pointed out, the state is so dependent on capital gains revenue.
But how weird is that? Best case scenario, let's say they got $1.5 to $2 billion. Best case. But when you're $16 billion in the red, it's like chump change.
It is chump change. And California is the worst of the nation in terms of getting most of its revenues from income taxes from you and me, people like you and me. And the other problem with California is penciled into the state constitution, they cannot negotiate government union benefits. They can't negotiate government union pensions. And it has to deal with what we need for California is a Governor Christie type restructuring of the government, which was what he did in New Jersey in order to right sizes. I don't think he can get it because they have basically mob democracy rule in Sacramento. That's the problem with California.
You mean it's contrasted with Jerry Brown trying to do a high-speed train to nowhere that's going to cost billions of dollars and be the ultimate white elephant?
Right. True.
But you know what's weird about California, Jonathan, is that it goes on. And I think there's a cynicism about that. It goes on, just like our country goes on with all this debt, because everyone waits for this, you know, I guess financial Godot where everything explodes. Hasn't happened. So people then merrily say it ain't going to happen, you know?
Well, it's slowly happening, Neil. I mean, it's happening in places like California, for example. I mean, you've got 3% of the taxpayers pay 60% of the income tax, and has been reported on for months now. A lot of those taxpayers, wealthy entrepreneurs, many of them likely work at Facebook, are simply leaving the state. They're migrating to places like Texas, which where they don't pay anywhere near the types of taxes they do in California. So as long as I mean, listen, stocks go up and down. We know that that's a reality of the market. But as long as states continue to spend like they've been spending, like California has on entitlement programs, no stock can go up high enough to cover those bills.
I mean, this is not the Eurozone. We're not going to push California out like we're going to push Greece out.
Why can't we?
Well, it would be a nice thought.
That's a joke. It's a joke.
No, but the real danger for California is how does it get out of its budget hole? And there's talk that they would get loans from the local Federal Reserve banks, temporary loans. That's a crisis scenario for California. And we don't want to go that route, right? We don't. Yeah. We don't want to have our Federal Reserve lending money to bankrupt states.
Yeah, I mean, if a family, if a business ran its finances like California has run it, it would be out of business immediately, would be bankrupt. But unfortunately, this is exactly the road they continue to go down: more spending and more taxes.
Well, we're on top of it, guys. Thank you all very much. In the meantime, next week, just a reminder, we are moving to prime time.